Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is go over the examples given in the workshop sheet that is attached to Summit. Now, in Summit, there's answers for this too, but I'm going to be explaining how to actually do it, except I'm not going to go into as much detail into the skills as I did on the previous videos of the actual playlist. So if you haven't watched the videos where I actually explain the skills and you're having a problem with this power focus area, I strongly recommend that you do so. I also recommend that you pause before I review each set of answers so that you can actually practice this and use it to do better on the actual power focus area. So the first skill I'm going to go over here is how to extract the rates from the graph and then use those rates to come up with equations for it. There was a video that I went into that. So here we have 3 examples. Go ahead and pause that before I reveal the answers. All right, so here are the answers for those questions. The way you do this is that you go to get the k, you go to the one of the values that you have in the graph, and you get the y value divided by the x value. Now remember, k is always going to be y divided by x. And so as long as you do that, you'll be fine. So this, for example, right here is 10 divided by 2, so your rate is 5. On this graph, you get 24 divided by 2, so the rate is 12. And on this graph, you have 1 divided by 6, so your rate is 1/6. So it's pretty straightforward how to get the rates from the graph. Now, how about the equations? The equations is also straightforward. Remember that all proportional equations have this kind of setup. Y equals k times x. So all you have to do is get your y quantity, which is the one that's in the y-axis, right? And then list that. So for example, here we put water. On this one, we put cost. And on this one, we put moon weight. And put those variables before the equal sign. Then you put an equal sign, and then you list your k. And we already had figured out the k in each one of them. So you see, the next thing is just copying down the rate. And last, you list your x variable, which is the one that's going to be in the horizontal axis. So you see how I put time on this one, hours on this one, because hours is here, and earth weight on this one. So it's pretty straightforward to create the equations once you have the variable and the rates. Okay? Now, the next part of this video, I'm going to talk about how to do the same kind of thing, but starting with tables. All right, so go ahead and pause it before you try it. Try all 3 of them. Okay, so here's the answers for the tables problems. All right, so as you can see, it's also pretty straightforward. You just got to go in this very same order as they give it to you in the problem. So if they want bales of hay per mule rate, that means they want bales of hay on top per. Remember, the word per means divided by. That's what that means. That just means divided by. So in this example, they want bales per divided by mules. So then you got to put the 1 divided by the 2, and you get a half. Pretty straightforward. Same kind of thing here. You want apples per tree. So you're going to go to apples, which is 26 divided by 2, and you get 13. Then how do you go from that to an equation? Same as you did on the graph. Whatever quantity you listed first. So the first one here was bales of hay. You put that before the equal sign. Here was apples. So you put apples before the equal sign. Then you put an equal sign. Then you put your rate, half or 13. And finally, you put the second quantity, which is the mule. Or in this case, the trees. And that's it. Now, there is a second version of the equation that could work. And that's if you flip the variables and also invert the k. Because you could have done mules per hay, but then it would be 2 divided by 1, and you would get 2 as your k, but then the variables would also be in the other order because you would have put mules first. But it is important that you do it on the same order as the problem requests. So in the answer options, either one of them could be right, but it's usually going to be the one that is in the order that the problem suggests. If the problem doesn't suggest an order, if it just says which of these could work, then you might as well check both versions of it and see which one of them is listed as the answer choices. What if you're given a table that's horizontal like that? Then it's even more important to pay attention to the order that is given to you in the problem. Water per means divided time. So I'm going to do water divided by time, or 5 divided by 1, which is 5. Water has to be first since I put it on top, then 5, then the time. And that's pretty much it. You could also have done time divided by gallons, in which case you would have gotten 1/5 instead, and the variables would be the other way around. Any of those two options works, but remember, it's usually going to work in the order the problem gives it to you. All right. Hope you're getting this so far. The next skill I'm going to talk about is how to go from word problems like these to um, actual things. Now, whether you have the sheet open or you are trying to follow along with me, pause the video and try yourself before you actually see the solutions. Okay, so if you have a unit rate on a problem and you're trying to see how to actually get the unit rate, it's the same thing as you did with the table. Go in the same order as it's listed in the problem and just write the equation and find the rate. So here, for example, in Europe, $12 for or per 8 euros. What is the exchange rate? So you could do dollars per euros and you get that answer. And that would be 12 divided by 8, right? Which would give you 1.5. But because you listed the dollars first, you put the dollar on the left side of the equation and then the euros on the right. Technically, the opposite equation would work as well. And then you would get this version of it. But either one could work on the problem, but it's most likely going to be in the order that is given to you. All right. So here's an example that's similar to that. Let's try the one with Michael here. Now, he covers 3/2 of a mile, 3/2 of a mile in 5/9 of an hour. What is the speed? Speed is a rate. So all you have to do to get the rate is one number divided by the other. So miles per hour. So all we would do here is get that 3/2 and divide by 5/9. Now, the tricky part is that you're dividing fractions. But remember, all you have to do that is copy that flip. So if you do that, you get 3/2 and you flip it and you do 9 over 5 because you have to flip the second one. And then you would get this answer, 27/10 or 2.7 miles per hour, right? Now, a lot of the answer choices aren't going to be fractions. So you may need to convert that fraction to a decimal. And all you have to do that is get a calculator and do the top divided by the bottom. So 27 divided by 10, which would be 2.7 miles per hour in this example. There's another example of that right here. Lima horses eats 5/8 of a bale of hay and 2/5 of a week. So what would be the unit rate? And you would do the same kind of thing. You would do 5/8, right, divided by 2/5. But of course, you would have to flip that second fraction around. So you would have 5/8 times 5 over 2, which would give you that 26/16, which if you put in the calculator would give you 1.5625 bales per week. Notice, by the way, that unit rates always have units, right? So on the graphs and the tables, I forgot to put the units, but technically they all have units, right? In this case, it would be 13 apples per trees or 5 gallons per minute or 5 bales per mule, and so forth, right? In the same order as the problem is listed. That's another way to see if the answers are right, because they should have the units in the right order. All right, so here's to another example like that. So he saved $25 in 4 hours of work, right? And then James receives $14.5 for 2 hours of work. How do their rates compare? There's problems like that. In these kinds of problems, you have to do two separate rates, one for the first situation and one for the second one, and just see how they compare. So if you did that, you would do $25 per 4 hours, and you would get $6.25 per hour for Sam. And if you repeat the same process for James, 14.5 per 2 hours, you would get 7.25 per hour for Ricky, which means James gets paid $1 more per hour. You're looking for the answer choice that says something like that, or says Ricky's paid more, something like that. So the secret for ones that ask you to compare rates is to do one rate for the first person and one rate for the second person. The only hint I have for you there is that don't make the mistake of getting Sam's numbers and confusing them with James' numbers. Each sentence is separate. Sam is one person, James is the other. So let's try that again with this problem with vehicles here. So you have vehicle A and vehicle B. Don't do math across sentences, okay? Miles per gallon is what we're doing over here. So the first example would be 300 divided by 15, which will give you for the vehicle B, you would get 500 divided by 20. Now, when you do both of those maths, you find out that vehicle A is 20 miles per gallon and vehicle B is 25 miles per gallon. And so vehicle A is 5 gallons per miles per gallon more. But remember, the key is to calculate the rates separately. So that's how you go from word problems to unit rates and compare them if the problem asks you to. Remember to do it in the same order as listed, and you will probably be fine. The last skill we have to go over here is how to go from a word problem that is a missing value problem to a solution. We did a video on this already, but I'm going to practice it again. So here we have two types of problems. Try them before I reveal the answers. Okay, so the answers for the problems are pretty straightforward. The way you do it is that as you read the problem, you look for words associated with numbers and put them on the title column. And then you, sentence by sentence, you write the actual information down. So for example, there's shirts, right? And there's cost. So see, the cost is one of the columns, the dollars, and then the shirts is in the other. Now I have per sentence per row. So this sentence goes in the first row, 2190, right? And you have 3 t-shirts. Now, when you do the math for that, you do 21.9 divided by 3, and you get 7.3 as your K. Remember, the way to do that is to get one side divided by the other, and I usually do the right divided by the left. So if you did that, you would get 7.3. Once you have your 7.3, right, you remember that if you divide it to go this way, you have to multiply it to go right. And so if you have 8 shirts and you put the 8 under the shirts, then all you have to do is get the 8 times that K to figure out the actual missing point, which would be $58.4 in this problem. Doing the same with the other problem, we have 12 ounces, so I write ounces in one of the columns. We have cost, so I write the cost on the other column. Now, the question is how much popcorn you buy for $9. So that's a cost, so I put that under the other one. Notice I paired up 5 and 12 because they would have been in the same sentence. That would have left this one blank, right? Now, the way I would have done this is do 12 divided by 5, and you get this K, 2.4. And remember that to go right, you have to multiply. So you do 9 times 2.4 and get your 21.6. And that is a lot of practice on all of the skills that shows up on the power focus area of proportions and percentages. This is the proportions part. On a different video, I will do the same kind of review with percentages. I'll see you guys then.